Global energy lines converge on the Strait of Hormuz. One-fifth of the world's oil supply passes through this narrow gap daily. It's the master physical valve for the global economy, with supertankers packed tightly into a strictly limited channel. For decades, worldwide energy security has relied on this specific physical layer. Industrial output and global shipping assume these vessels will pass through this narrow gap without interruption. Because of this extreme geographic concentration, a disruption here doesn't stay local. It mathematically guarantees an immediate worldwide economic shockwave. On February 28, 2026, the administration launched Operation Epic Theory. It was a sudden military strike against Iran, framed by the White House as a necessary step toward regional peace. But the physical consequences hit the water within 24 hours. By March 1st, after 4 ship attacks and 2 reported deaths, transit through the strait effectively shuttered. This deficit ripped a hole in the global market. With the waterway closed, roughly 14 million barrels of oil vanished from the daily supply chain almost overnight. The administration had expected a contained military operation, but the rigid math of the global oil market dictated a different reality. They had just unleashed a historic energy crisis. The initial strategy was to talk the market down. White House officials made public promises of energy dominance and suggested that U.S. naval escorts would soon secure commercial shipping. The result was a period of violent market whiplash. In early March, an optimistic presidential interview artificially triggered a massive sell-off, sending oil prices tumbling $35 in a single drop. That optimism was short-lived. Energy Secretary Chris Wright posted a phantom tweet claiming the Navy had successfully escorted a tanker, but the post was quickly deleted, and the White House had to admit no vessels had been escorted at all. Markets spiraled into chaos. It was a clear signal that political ultimatums and social media posts cannot function as control mechanisms for the physics of global commodities. At the start of the conflict, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had pledged a strategy of maximum pressure, refusing to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve even as gas prices climbed. But the administration soon hit a breaking point. Treasury models began projecting an economy-breaking spike to $150 a barrel. To prevent a total meltdown, the White House capitulated. They quietly issued waivers for Russian oil and lifted sanctions on Iranian oil stored at sea to artificially inject supply back into the market. While global shipping remained stalled, Iranian vessels became the only ships moving freely through the strait, collecting a massive financial windfall even as U.S. strikes continued on their mainland. The mathematical limits of the severed supply chain had forced the world's largest military to abandon its core strategic objectives. Many officials assumed that robust domestic energy production, the shale buffer, would protect American consumers. But because oil is priced globally, a closure in the Middle East still drains wallets in the Midwest. By late March, U.S. gas prices shattered the $4 mark, reaching an average of $4.10 a gallon and eroding the domestic buffer. The secondary fallout was just as severe. Data from late March revealed that consumer inflation had tripled as the energy shock filtered through the rest of the economy. An abstract military operation thousands of miles away had mutated into a domestic crisis centered on affordability. Desperate to stabilize prices, the White House brokered a fragile ceasefire, sending a negotiating team led by Vice President J.D. Vance to Pakistan. The stock market surged in temporary relief, but on the water, the reality remained volatile. The waterway was still contested, and many shipping companies refused to risk the transit. On April 18th, the timeline reached a breaking point. Iranian gunboats fired on another tanker, proving the naval blockade failed to secure the waterway. Military supremacy could not outmuscle a mathematical deficit. This 40-day window demonstrated that the global economy remains highly vulnerable to its most critical physical chokepoints.